Namaste. Welcome to this short core strengthening practice, which is based around the side plank and some variations. So there have been two videos previous to this one. One was a beginner's variations of side plank, or for those who are building their strength towards being able to do side plank here on the floor. And one was some of the sort of intermediate side plank variations for those who are progressing their practice and building strength still. So this practice is a little bit more dynamic, and it uses little flow to work into a little bit more strength. Very, very good for the core. I'm going to show you a couple of different things. So for this practice, we're going to start by doing a variation of side plank with the feet apart. So both feet are on the floor. We just go from one side to the other, and we'll go from downward dog. So if you haven't done this before, maybe just watch and then join in when you're ready. So I'm going to start with my hands. I want them to be underneath my shoulders, maybe ever so slightly in front, with the fingers as spread out as possible. My wide hand base gives me a better purchase, better balance, and better strength. I'm going to tuck the toes under and come into downward facing dog. So just beginning by easing into your downward dog. I definitely would recommend a little warm up before this practice. But if you don't do that, then at least give yourself a little warm through the backs of the legs with downward dog, tipping the pelvis so that the tailbone is lifted and the belly muscles are engaged. When you're ready, we're going to go from downward dog first just to plank. So here we don't want to drop the hips too much. We want to keep pressing the mat away, and then return chest towards the thighs. I'm just going to widen my stance ever so slightly so that when I come forwards, my shoulders are over my hands, not ahead of them. Pressing into the heels, lifting in the belly, and just going from plank to downward dog, and then back to downward dog. Back to plank from downward dog. And you can do this with your breath, or you can simply focus on the movements and where the body needs to be strong to achieve this. You really want to be strong through the upper body, the core, and the legs. So everything engaging nicely. And then we're going to change this movement. So we come forward into plank and drop the heels to the left. Leave the left hand under the left shoulder and reach the right arm up to the ceiling. And then pivot on the toes, take the right hand back and come into downward facing dog. Same thing to the other side, coming forward into plank, firm in the belly muscles, drop the heels to the right, leave the right hand under the right shoulder, lift the left arm up, and then pivoting on the toes, taking the left hand back to the mat and pressing back into downward facing dog. You might need to adjust your feet a little bit as you work, as they move around on the mat. Lifting in the belly, lifting in the tailbone, coming forward into plank, dropping the heels to the left. Keep the left side of the body lifted away from the mat. Reach the right fingertips up. Pivot on the toes, into plank, and back into downward facing dog. And then forward into plank, dropping the heels to the right, lifting the right side of the body away from the floor, lifting that hip up, reaching the left hand to the fingertips to the sky, then pivoting on the toes and back to downward facing dog. And then if you want to do a few where you come forward to plank, heels to the left, lift the right arm, and then through plank straight away, heels to the right, lift the left arm. And we can go from side to side a couple of times, always keeping the hips nice and high. And maybe one more time to each side. Really pressing into the underneath arm. Finding that length and strength through the body. When you're ready, coming back to plank, coming back to downward facing dog, taking a moment to wriggle, so soften in the elbows, soften in the knees, wriggle through the neck. And then when you're ready, you can drop the knees to the mat. You can take a child's pose if you'd like to, or just simply take a moment off the wrists, roll through the wrists. And this is strong work for the wrists. So if you are sensitive in the wrists, then that just means you need to gradually build towards it. Maybe do a few fewer repetitions, or maybe do just one at a time, resting the wrists in between times, giving them a shake out. Or you can look back at some of the videos of prepping the wrists for this stronger work and do some stretches or wrist work first. Excuse me. So our next variation is not with side plank, but with the normal plank, and just going up and down from the hands to the forearms. So it's just a step up, step down plank, that's all. But again, very good for the core. It will work the size of the body somewhat, just not in the same way. So we come into downward facing dog. And we want the feet to be a nice comfortable distance apart and a little lift in the tailbone, firm in the belly. And then as we come forward into plank, just checking that your shoulders end up over the hands, not too far forwards. And then from here, we put the left elbow down, the right elbow down, keeping the body nice and rigid and firm. And then the left hand down, right hand down. So we come back up onto the hands. So down onto the left elbow, down onto the right elbow, forearm plank, up onto the left hand, up onto the right hand, press up plank. One more time on this side. Forearms, forearms, hands, hands. And then we'll take a little rest in downward facing dog, just to stretch out the shoulders, wriggle out any effort in the body. When you're ready, you can come forward into plank again, and we do the same thing, but starting with the right elbow first. So right forearm down, left forearm down, right hand down, left hand down. Right forearm down, left forearm down, right hand down, left hand down. And one more time. These are quite toughy, so don't be surprised if it takes a little while to build up a few repetitions, and then come back into downward facing dog. Give yourself a little wiggle. And then resting down onto your knees or onto your belly in child's pose, however you like. So try these two variations. They're quite good to add to your sun salutation. So that part where you do plank in the middle, you could perhaps add a little bit of side plank or dynamic plank to down dog, or dynamic plank to down dog to side plank to down dog, or this up and down stepping, which is quite good as well. And you'll find that with just a little bit of repetition, you build strength really very readily. And I hope that you feel strong in your upper body as a result. It will give great benefits to the rest of your practice. So I hope you enjoy this, and join me again for another many side plank variations practice or something else. Namaste.